I remember the exact moment I felt the silence in the room change. It was a Sunday, and the steam from my coffee had just stopped curling. The mug was warm in my hands, but the feeling was gone. My daughter was talking, her voice bright and quick, about plans, about futures, about a life that seemed to have less and less room for me in it. And I sat there, holding that cooling cup, thinking one clear, sharp thought. I have become a guest in my own story.
For 28 years, our home was a busy, loving chaos. After my husband passed, my world narrowed to two pillars, my son, Michael, and my daughter, Sarah. This house, the one we're sitting in now, was my anchor. I'd poured my savings into it, my retirement fund going into repairs, the porch, making it a place they'd always want to come back to. When Sarah met David, I was happy. He was ambitious, from a well-off family, and he seemed to adore her. Or so it seemed. Slowly, their weekend visits became less about family and more about logistics. They'd talk about property values in our subdivision, about how the house had untapped equity. David called it smart planning. I just called it home. The moral fault line I see now wasn't blatant greed. It was a sense of entitlement dressed up as modern concern. "You shouldn't have to deal with the upkeep, Mom," Sarah would say, rubbing my shoulder. "We're thinking of your peace of mind." I mistook their maneuvering for care. I didn't see the blueprint being drawn over my life. The trigger was Sarah's wedding. It was to be a beautiful but reasonable affair, or so we'd initially discussed. But one evening, they presented me with the chosen venues package, a luxurious country club far beyond my means. The bottom line figure made my breath catch. "Don't worry about the cost, Linda," David said, smiling easily. "We'll handle it. Consider it our gift. Well," he paused, glancing at Sarah, "our investment in the family's future." Sarah squeezed my hand. "We thought, instead of you draining your retirement on this, you could contribute in a different, smarter way. You could add our names to the house deed. It's just a formality, it stays in the family. Then we could use the equity to fund the wedding and secure everyone's future." The room tilted slightly. The house, my only real asset, my security. They were asking for it in exchange for a party. My voice was thin. "You want me to put my house up for a wedding?" Sarah's smile tightened. "Not put up, Mom. Leverage." That was the turning point, the moment love started to sound like a financial term. After I said I needed to think, the atmosphere turned chilly. My reluctance became an obstacle. The pressure escalated in quiet, painful ways. First, it was the guest list. I was handed a truncated version. "The venue has a strict head count," David explained. "Many of my lifelong friends, my brother's family, were deemed not a priority." Then my role evaporated. I wasn't asked to go dress shopping anymore. "We booked a planner," Sarah said, her phone always in her hand. "It's more efficient." The worst were the small, domestic erasures. David started referring to my sunroom as the future nursery, and my late husband's study as the potential home office. My favorite reading chair, the one by the fireplace, disappeared one day. Donated. "It was so worn out, Mom," Sarah said. "We ordered you a nicer one." But the new one didn't have the familiar dip in the cushion. The loneliness was a physical weight. I'd eat meals alone. The silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I tracked my grocery receipts, watching my fixed income stretch thinner as they'd forget to chip in for the shared meals they enjoyed. I was fading in my own space, being politely, systematically edited out of the narrative. This emotional story was becoming my quiet reality. The truth came by accident. I was looking for an old recipe card in the desk for the rehearsal dinner. Behind a stack of manuals, I found a sleek, new folder. A dawning suspicion made me open it. Inside were not just wedding contracts. There were printed email threads between David and a real estate developer, architectural sketches of our lot subdivided, financial projections, and a highlighted, chilling line. Securing the mother's equity is the final hurdle. Once the deed is joint, we can move on the development approval. Current wedding budget is a minor draw against the projected profit. My hands went cold. The wedding wasn't the end goal. It was the tool, the excuse to get to the house. My daughter's marriage was a line item in a business plan. I didn't feel powerful then. I felt a deep, trembling hurt. But the game was suddenly clear. This wasn't about family. This was about an asset. I didn't yell. I didn't weep. A strange, solid calm settled over me. I photographed every page. I placed the folder back exactly as I found it. The next day, I met with an old friend, a retired estate attorney. Over coffee, I showed him the pictures. He listened, his expression turning stern. "You need to lock everything down, Linda, now," he said. He referred me to a sharp, compassionate attorney in town. My plan wasn't about vengeance. It was about sovereignty. With my lawyer, I took 3 quiet steps. First, I updated my will and created an irrevocable trust, making my intentions for the house unmistakable. Second, I moved the original deed and title to a safe deposit box. Third, and most crucially, we drafted a formal letter of understanding. It stated that I retained sole ownership of my home. It clarified that any financial contribution I made to the wedding was a gift, not an exchange for any property interest. My resolve was silent but absolute. There were no dramatic scenes, just a quiet reassembly of my own boundaries. I was no longer the mother to be managed. I was the homeowner to be respected. I chose my moment. A week before the wedding, with final invoices arriving, they were at the kitchen island debating menu options. I placed 2 copies of the letter on the granite countertop. "Before any more checks are written," I said, my voice steady, "I need you both to read and acknowledge this." David picked it up. His face, usually so smooth, flushed as he read. "What is this? Don't you trust us?" "This provides clarity," I said, looking at Sarah, whose eyes had widened. "My house is not part of any development deal. My contribution to your wedding is my blessing and what I can afford from my savings. Period." Sarah's face crumpled, not in sadness, but in frustrated anger. "How can you do this? You're ruining everything we've worked for." "You were working with my equity," I said softly, "not with me." The confrontation wasn't loud. It was devastatingly still. The consequence landed not as a shout, but as the silent shatter of their assumption. Their strategy had failed. The leverage was mine. The wedding happened. It was lovely, but not as grand as they'd envisioned. I attended, I smiled, I gave my toast. A firm boundary was now in place, permanent and understood. Our relationship exists in a new, careful dimension. It is polite, but a fundamental trust is gone. Recently, Sarah and David had a baby boy. I visit, I bring books, I rock my grandson. I am a presence in his life, but on my own terms. I learned that love can get entangled with other motives, convenience, ambition, a sense of ownership. Untangling it requires not a war, but a calm, unshakable stand. The moral of this real-life story isn't about winning a fight. It's about understanding that sometimes the most loving act is to refuse to disappear from your own life. One reflective closing line: you can pour your heart into a family, but you must never pour the deed to your soul into their hands. If this story of quiet strength found a place with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. For more calm, real-life stories about navigating complex relationships, consider subscribing. Thank you for listening.